Hi viewers. Hello everyone. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to choose between love and responsibility? Where the heart pulls in one direction, but life, family, duty, and expectations pull in the other? That's the crossroads where Diep now stands. Months ago, she was just a girl from the countryside. A girl who sold vegetables at the market, whose hands were rough from work, whose dreams were quiet and hidden behind tired smiles. She never thought she'd leave that world. Never thought she'd survive the illness that drained her, both body and soul. But today? Today, she walks through the shining glass doors of a towering corporate office in the heart of the city. The girl who once watched others pass by in heels and crisp suits now wears them herself. Her long hair is tied neatly behind her head, her steps are confident, and her name is printed on the door, Secretary to CEO James. It all started the day she chose not to give up. After months in the hospital, fighting fevers, for drips, sleepless nights, and moments where she thought she'd never walk again, Diep stood up. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. She had wanted to give up. She had pushed James away, told him she wasn't worthy, said not yet when he opened that velvet ring box. But he stayed. He brought strawberry milk. He held her hand. And silently, she began to believe again. James never treated her like she was weak. In his eyes, she was strong, even when she didn't see it in herself. When she finally walked out of that hospital, sunlight hit her face like a second chance. And waiting by the door, as always, was James. He didn't say anything grand. Just offered his hand. And she took it. Now, she walks beside him, not as a patient, not as a lost girl, but as his partner in every sense of the word. At work, she types up reports, manages his schedule, and learns quickly. At night, she studies finance books he leaves for her on the bedside table. He doesn't want her to just survive, he wants her to rise. But this isn't just a love story. It's also a story of power, family secrets, and coming storms. Because behind the polished walls of the company, something is brewing. A truth buried for decades. And when it comes to light, it will test everything: James' loyalty, Diep's strength, and the fragile love they've just begun to rebuild. But for now, Diep walks with her head held high. Because she's no longer the girl who watches from the sidelines. She's in the story now. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Diep had recovered her health, earned her place beside one of the most powerful CEOs in the country, and was slowly being accepted into a world she once only dreamed of. In the company, whispers followed her every move, not out of cruelty, but curiosity. Who was this girl who captured CEO James' heart? What was her story? But Diep didn't let the murmurs distract her. She showed up early. She stayed late. She learned faster than anyone expected. And James? He watched her with quiet pride. He never said it out loud, but in the way he looked at her when she solved a problem or presented a report, there was admiration, maybe even awe. Then, the letter came. It was delivered to Diep's office in a plain white envelope. No return address. Just her name. Inside, a single sentence changed everything. You are the blood of the family. She read it once, then again. Her hands trembled. The family. One of the most powerful corporations in the country. And James' family's fiercest business rival for over 30 years. Their battles were the stuff of business school case studies, two empires constantly outmaneuvering each other, fighting over contracts, land, influence. And now, somehow, Diep was connected to them? That night, she couldn't sleep. Memories of her childhood came flooding back, her mother's long silences, the way she always avoided questions about Diep's real father, the moments when strangers would look at her twice but say nothing. At first, she didn't tell James. How could she? Just when things were falling into place, just when she felt like she belonged. But the truth doesn't wait for the right time. 3 days later, James found her in their apartment, holding a stack of old photographs and documents she had secretly uncovered. Her eyes were red, her voice barely above a whisper. James, I think I know who my father is. He sat beside her without a word. And slowly, she told him everything. The letter. The resemblance in the photos. The birth certificate hidden at the bottom of her mother's drawer. The painful truth, Diep was the illegitimate daughter of Pham Ton Vinh, CEO of the Pham Corporation. James didn't speak for a long time. He just stared ahead, like his world had tilted sideways. This wasn't just a shocking twist of fate. This was betrayal, at least in his world. His parents had built their empire by resisting the very man who now shared blood with the woman James loved. For years, James had been trained to defeat Pham Ton Vinh in boardrooms, not break bread with his family. And yet, Diep had done nothing wrong. She hadn't even known. That night was the first time James left without saying goodnight. Not out of anger, but confusion, heartbreak, fear. He needed time. And Diep? She sat in silence, praying he would return. The days that followed were cold. The board found out first. Leaks, whispers, a full report landed on the desk of James' mother. The same mother who had started to warm up to Diep now looked at her like a ticking bomb. "She's a Pham," she said to James in a hushed but sharp voice. "You think love is enough? What if this is all a setup?" James defended her. Of course he did. But he was torn. Every memory, every shared laugh, every hospital visit, were they real? Was this the same Diep he had held while she cried in pain? The same girl who couldn't walk 3 months ago but now faced corporate wolves with unblinking eyes? Yes. Yes, it was her. But the world didn't see it that way. Diep was summoned for questioning by James' family lawyers. Her bank accounts were investigated. Her phone monitored. Suddenly, she wasn't a secretary. She was a suspect. The world she had just entered now turned cold and hostile. And yet, she didn't run. Because too Diep had changed. She no longer bowed her head. No longer accepted her fate. She looked those lawyers in the eye and told them, "I am who I am. And I've earned my place." James watched it all. Torn between the people who raised him and the woman he loved, the woman whose blood now echoed with a name his family had vowed to destroy. One night, unable to sleep, he walked out to the city skyline and whispered into the darkness. "God, why her?" But deep down, he already knew the answer. Because only someone like Too Diep could survive all this. And still keep her heart intact. Diep stood outside the glass-walled boardroom, her reflection faint in the morning light, but her presence undeniable. Inside sat the titans of the corporate world, men and women in $1,000 suits who had built empires with words sharper than swords. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not as a Pham. Not as a girl who once picked vegetables barefoot in a muddy field. But here she was, summoned not by her job title, but by her bloodline. James sat at the head of the table, tense and silent. He had fought hard to keep her from being dragged into this, but his pleas had fallen on deaf ears. His mother, steely-eyed and unrelenting, had demanded answers. The board wanted clarity. The shareholders feared scandal. Was this a love story? Or was it corporate espionage in disguise? Diep walked in with her chin up. She wore a fitted navy dress, her long black hair tied in a sleek ponytail. There was no makeup to mask the fatigue on her face, but her eyes burned with quiet fire. She didn't sit until she was told to. She didn't speak until spoken to. And when she did, her voice was calm but resolute. "I didn't choose to be born into the Pham family," she said. "But I chose to work here. I chose to earn every task, every responsibility. And I chose to love James long before I knew any of this." Gasps followed. A few board members leaned back, startled by her candor. James's mother narrowed her eyes. "You expect us to believe you didn't know?" she asked. "That it's all coincidence?" "No," Diep said. "I expect you to believe the truth. Because if you can't tell the difference between ambition and sincerity, then maybe the problem isn't me." The tension in the room was suffocating. But James looked at her like she'd just lifted a boulder from his chest. He stood, finally, placing a firm hand on the table. "She has more integrity than half the people in this room," he said. "And if you force me to choose between this company and her—" "James," his mother snapped. "I'll choose her. Every time." Silence. Then murmurs. Then a single cough that echoed like a gavel. The meeting ended in chaos, with the board undecided and the media beginning to sniff at the edges of the drama. Paparazzi followed Diep home. Her old neighborhood was suddenly flooded with reporters. Her mother was chased into markets with cameras in her face. A private investigator approached her childhood friend with bribes for dirt. Every moment of her life was under a microscope. Meanwhile, James' father, once silent in the shadows, emerged. A cold man with a mind like steel traps, he summoned James for a one-on-one meeting at a private country club. "This girl," he said, swirling whiskey in a crystal glass, "is going to ruin you. Walk away while you still have something to salvage." James didn't flinch. "She saved me," he replied. "Long before you noticed I was drowning. But things got worse before they got better." The Pham Corporation found out about Diep. Her biological father, Pham Ton Vin, sent her a formal invitation to meet. To talk. To consider stepping into the legacy she'd been denied. At first, she ignored it. But the second letter came with something she hadn't expected, a photo of her as a baby, being held by the man she'd never met. On the back, *, "I've always known. Forgive me." *. James didn't know how to react. Part of him wanted to tear the letter apart. The other part, well, it understood. This was her blood. Her unanswered questions. Her right to know. So, on a rainy Sunday, she met her father. It was quiet. Awkward. He was older, grayer than the photo. He apologized, not just for abandoning her, but for letting her grow up thinking she was invisible. "I wanted to protect you," he said. "You wanted to protect yourself," she replied. Still, she listened. And when she left, she didn't make any promises. She didn't take his money or his name. But she took the closure. The understanding. Back in James's world, things were cracking. Investors were pulling out. Rumors of a hostile merger with the Pham Corporation spread like wildfire. His board was panicking. "You see what she's done?" his mother hissed. "This is what loving her has cost us." James was exhausted. Between emergency meetings and shielding Diep from endless media attacks, he was burning out. But Diep, sensing this, stepped up in a way no one expected. She gave a public interview. Alone. No PR team. No script. Just her. On live television, she told her story. Of growing up poor. Of never knowing her father. Of working odd jobs to support her sick mother. Of falling in love with a man she thought she could never have. Of being dragged into a world where her name meant war. "I don't want a legacy," she said, tears in her eyes. "I want a life. One I build. One I choose. And I choose James. Not for power. Not for wealth. But because when I was nothing, he saw me." It broke the internet. People rallied to her side. Influencers posted about her bravery. CEOs quietly offered her jobs. James' company stock, after dipping dangerously, rebounded as public sympathy soared. Even James' mother began to soften, not because she liked Diep, but because she finally understood this girl wasn't here to destroy. She was here to survive. And love? Love had survived, too. James returned home that night with flowers. Nothing expensive, just white daisies, the kind she once told him reminded her of home. He knelt. No speech. No ring. Just a promise, let's build something real. From scratch. Just us. She cried. And nodded. But the road ahead? Still uncertain. Her father wanted her in the fam boardroom. James needed her by his side. The public saw her as a symbol. The corporations saw her as a pawn. And the only question that remained was, could she truly escape the past, or would her bloodline forever define her future? The day began like any other at the towering corporate headquarters, polished floors, rhythmic keystrokes, and the sharp click of heels echoing down the corridor. But for Diep, this morning felt different. There was a storm brewing, not of wind or rain, but of truth, consequences, and long-awaited choices. James had been avoiding her, not cruelly, but protectively. Ever since the board learned of Diep's true identity as the lost daughter of their fiercest competitor, pressure had been mounting on him from every angle. Meetings became interrogations. Friendly smiles turned calculating. Whispers filled the halls. Conflict of interest. Sleeper agent. Betrayal wrapped in silk. And yet, James stood firm. For weeks, he shielded Diep, defended her character, and distanced her from the venomous politics of corporate warfare. But it came at a cost. The warmth between them, once tender and full of hope, cooled into something polite, strained. Professional. That afternoon, a formal letter arrived at Diep's desk. Not an email. Not a text. A sealed envelope with the family crest of her biological father's conglomerate. Inside, an offer. Full partnership. Executive training overseas. A fresh start, without James. She stared at the letter for a long time. Her heart thundered like it did the day she collapsed in the hospital hallway, or the night she almost said yes to James' proposal. But this was different. This wasn't life and death. This was who she would choose to be. Later that evening, Diep walked into James' office without knocking. He looked up from a pile of reports, surprised but not startled. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither spoke. The silence was a battlefield. "I got a letter," she began, holding it up. "From them." James' jaw clenched. "I figured they would. They want me to leave," she said. "To become one of them." "And do you want that?" A long pause. "I want to stop running from who I am. From where I came from. But I also want to stay where I've grown." She looked around the office, the same one where she once brought coffee and dropped files with trembling hands. "I've become someone here. Not because of my name, but because you believed in me." James stood, walking around the desk until he was right in front of her. He searched her face. "Diep, I would never hold you back. If you need to go, go." "But that's just it, James," she said, voice breaking slightly. "For the first time, I'm not choosing between two lives. I'm choosing the one I want to build, with you." And with those words, she reached into her pocket and pulled out the same small ring box James had once hidden in his coat. "I found this weeks ago. In your drawer. I never opened it. I was scared. I didn't think I was ready." Her fingers trembled now, just like they had that day with the strawberry milk. Slowly, she opened the box. The ring sparkled like a promise long kept. "Still scared?" James asked softly. Diep nodded. "But less scared of failing, than of never trying." James dropped to one knee, not for show, not for drama, but because the moment demanded humility and clarity. Diep. "Will you share this chaotic, difficult, beautiful life with me?" Tears streamed down her face. She dropped to her knees too, their foreheads touching. "Yes." The ring slid onto her finger with ease, like it had been waiting all along. Outside, the city lights blinked into evening. The boardroom battles could wait. The past could rest. What mattered now was the future they would face together. If this moment moved you, please like this video to show your love for Diep's strength and James' devotion. Comment below, what was your favorite scene, the ring, the letter, or that final proposal? And don't forget to subscribe to follow their journey, because life isn't just about success, it's about the people who walk with you through fire.